So, 2 year, yeah, a year later, like like I said, you've had a lot of project over the years. The year after the power plant opens, you actually got to work with another one of your mentors, I believe, Mr. Bob Gurr, on the King Kong encounter at on the backlot tour.
Universal Studios tour, and this time he wins.
Yeah. Now, the King Kong attraction was actually conceptualized by Peter Alexander and Bob Ward at Universal. They had the concept of the tram. They had the concept of the tram and Kong, and they knew they wanted to do that. But they didn't know, and they knew it was going to be on a sound stage. They didn't know how to make a show of that with beginning, middle, and end. So they came to me, and they said it was going to go in like this, and it was going to come around the corner, and no, it was going to come in. And so I came up with, I think, if I remember right, that you would come into New York, to the New York sound stage, right? Not the King Kong stage, the New York stage. Come into New York, and New York's in the middle of some kind of chaotic thing, and we staged the tenements of New York over there, and you could see multiple TV screens in the rooms, the living rooms of these different places, so you could see the newscast going.
Late word just in. The path of destruction continues east, causing thousands to flee their homes. Police admit that they are powerless to stop the enraged beast. Military units are rushing to the scene. The beast was last sighted near the 200 block of Old Fulton Avenue.
On, and in the newscast, you can see that there's a terrible thing that, you know, Kong is on the loose. He's over by the such and such bridge, and then you see a helicopter.
There's a tram load of people down there.
Coming down on the TV screen, and then you hear it above you, and you feel the wind, and you realize what you're seeing there is above you, and she's yelling down, "You have to get out! You have to get out!" through a bullphone. "Oh, you got to get out! You know, the King Kong." And then,
"We've got to go down and warn them. Attention, people on the tram! You are in danger. Repeat, you are in what? No, we have to go down and help them."
And then there's and the helicopter then crashes and explodes, and as it does, the tram takes off. To get out of the way of the explosion, you're feeling these flames and all that kind of stuff. And as you come around the corner, there's Kong, right? And Kong is doing his thing. So we came up with all of that, the show context that leads up, because that's what I said. I said, you know, you can't just come in and see Kong. You got to have a build-up. And you can hear him. You hear him before you see him, and all that kind of stuff. And my other contribution was Bob Gurr and Dave Schweninger and Tom Reidenbach. They were the ones who came up with Kong and that kind of thing. And then someone came up with the idea, and that was a biggie, where Kong actually grabs the bridge and snaps it, and the bridge bends, and the entire tram with people on actually slides as if it's going to slide off the bridge. That's a big engineering job to figure out how to push that wheel tram, you know, in a way that doesn't damage the thing, and it's pretty cool. And so the one thing, we were in a meeting, and the meeting was to figure out what Kong's breath would be. And Jay Stein he wanted to smell rotting fish and rotting carcasses and stuff, because as if he's eating all this raw meat. I said, well, that's going to suck. No one's going to like that. No one's going to smell rotten, you know, food. And they, well, what do you think it should be? And I said as a joke, I said, well, maybe it should be a banana. And everyone laughed, and they thought it was funny, but not, you know, just a funny idea. That's all it was meant to be. And then me or Peter or someone said, hey, what if it really is banana breath? I mean, that's a good gag. And gags I learned from Albertino. Gags are good. Gags make people laugh. You know, it's a great gag. It's a kind of a payoff. Instead of paying it off with rotting food and everyone going, you know, you give them all the excitement. You give them the bridge starts to go down, and then the last thing you give them is this blast of banana breath, and people laughed, and it was good. So it was a great kicker. So it was my idea to do the banana breath, but I admit I did it kind of as a joke for the room at first, but then it became like, hey, what about that? So that was cool. But that project was Peter Alexander and Bob Ward. They were really leading from Universal. They were the guys at Universal. They were kind of leading the parade on that one, and we just backed them up, and we did the idea of what could happen to bring it into it, and then we did create all the software, all the film stuff, and all the soundtrack, and all the voice. We did all that. We created the voice for Kong. We did all that for them on the production side, yeah, that was a fun project too.
But still on the subject of it, June of 2008, the big Universal Studio fire.
This is a soundstage that is on fire on the Universal City Studios lot there in Universal City, Southern California. It's just adjacent to Burbank and Studio City area.
Took the attraction and a bunch of the back lot.
Yep. So they brought Peter Jackson in to do the film version, which I think, you know, as film things go, that's good. But I do think the original King Kong, you know, that physical King Kong, I think it was better in a way. But I take nothing away from Peter Jackson's version. Did you see that version? Have you been on that one?
Yeah. I haven't been on that version of the ride, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, it's very dynamic and it's good. I mean, you know, I miss the original one. I think there's something to doing animatronics at that size and scale that make it kind of unique. But you know, it's a different generation, and maybe that the Peter Jackson one's better for the generation that's now been raised on more. You know, when I was doing 3D stuff, there was a whole arm of people, part of the entire Universal design group, which was much smaller then. It was just a few guys, but I won't mention their names. They just thought the whole idea of 3D doesn't belong in theme parks. It should be, you know, it shouldn't be 3D things. And they fought me on T2 3D. They fought me on Spider-Man 3D, and no one thought either one of those would work. But luckily, Jay Stein believed in me, and not blindly. I had to prove every step of the way that these different things were going to work. But you know, whenever you're doing all the best things I've done in my career, the experts at the time said wouldn't work. The Forum Shops at Caesars in Las Vegas, which has been the most successful, one of the top 5 most successful retail shopping malls in per square foot sales since it opened 45 years ago, every year. All the retail experts before it opened said this is going to fail. You're trying to turn a retail mall into a theme park, and it will never work. That's what the experts said. Okay, they were all wrong. All the guys that said the Spider-Man 3D ride won't work, wrong. All the people that thought T2 3D wouldn't work, wrong. I mean, you know, so when you're breaking new ground, you have to know your stuff. You have to be confident. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to, you know, kind of move with the hits and still find your way. And you have to stay consistent with your vision, and you have to have a good team around you that on your side that support you, no matter how much everyone else is. I mean, Terminator 2 3D, just to jump ahead, they made me put that show up for them to see, the executives, before it was ready. I told them, I said, this is not stitched. You know, these shows you stitch together. You know, segment by segment, you program to the soundtrack, to the thing, and nothing really works till it all works. They wanted to see it, and it was about a week before it was supposed to open. And they came by, and I prepared them. I said, don't come, you're going to be disappointed, don't come, but they came. We tried to do a little run through for them. It was a disaster, but I told them it was going to be. And I've been fighting to get my proper credit on this thing with one of the executives there, who shall remain nameless. But as Tom Williams and the other executives kind of walked off, he hung behind for a minute, and he came up to me in a very snide voice, and he said, "You still want your name on this?" And I said, "I want it plastered all over it. Just, yeah, put my name all over this, okay?" But of course, once it was a hit, that is not what they did. So right up until opening, nobody believed in that show, except me and the people that were doing it. The executives were scared shitless. This was their big summer thing, and they thought it was going to go. They made me do a preview, although they came through about 2 weeks before. Sorry. Then they got so nervous about it, they wanted to do a preview about a week before it was supposed to open. That one I did pull together for the public. We were far enough along, But what we really had was we had 5 or 6 stage managers in different places on headsets cueing things to the track that ultimately will, of course, be part of the overall show control. So, and we didn't even know we could pull it off because we'd never actually done one complete run through. But they hauled in people off the streets. They had people come, do you want to see a show? It's a new Terminator thing. And then come in here, we get a special preview. So I got up on that little station where the girl is for the pre-show. And I said, hey, you're all welcome to this Terminator. It's a unique kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. But it is a technical rehearsal. It could stop midway through the show. We may have to stop the show and ask you to leave. And we're just preparing you. That could happen, that you're really seeing a first-time show. So we did it. We made it all the way through the show. The audience went ape bananas. And I mean, they were just thundering with applause. You know, they were yelling in all the right places, laughing in all the right places. It was just great. They did not tell me they were going to have a marketing group out there taking a survey of the show. I mean, how unfair is that? First show. But they did. They told me afterwards that they did a survey, and then Ron would call me later, Ron Bension, and he calls me like at 9 o'clock at night. He goes, you got another one tomorrow. You got another preview tomorrow. I said, we can't. We're trying to put the show together, blah, blah, blah. No, you got to do it. Well, why do we have to do it? Because we've never had an attraction in history that got a 98 with the audience. We've never had an attraction that got that. So we think there was something abnormal. And you can't do that little pre-show warm-up that you were doing. You know, I said, well, I still got to get up and tell them that we could stop midway through. But okay, if you think I was hyping it too much, I'll just be very technical. That's what I did. So next day we do a show. Get up there, I go, I'm just here. I'm the director of the show. I'm just here to say this is a technical director. We may have to stop the show, but we hope you enjoy it. Blah blah. We were very short, right? Did it. Same thing. Absolutely through the roof. 98.6. They never had reviews like that. Anything. He said, there's a false belief in the theme park industry that a show, no matter how good it is, can never get a rating higher than a great ride. A great show will never get a higher rating than a great ride. Great rides will always get a better rating because they're rides. They never had a ride in history that had a 98.6 ever. So this is what really blew me away. It's like, okay, you're getting ratings that we've never got on our best rides, like Back to the Future, right? Like those things. And I said, well, I'm elated. I'm happy to hear it. I'm not surprised because this is different, Ron. It's not like, I mean, the funny thing is people go to see that and they refer to it as a ride. They always would go, did you go on the T2 ride, man? That's so good. So I love that they would think of it as a ride instead of a show. But anyway, I think in some ways, if you're confident about what your abilities are and what you put together and you have a really good team that you trust around you, that when you have a bunch of naysayers, it almost makes you more dedicated and a harder fighting to bring the thing to life in a way that will really work. And that definitely happened on T2 3D. It happened on Spider-Man as well. Although I wasn't involved in the actual, I was deeply involved in T2 3D right up through the end, directing it and programming it and everything. Just, you know, so Spider-Man, after we did the concept and the storyboards, the design, all that kind of stuff, the new internal team headed by Scott Trowbridge and one other person, they kind of took it on the production side. They did a good job. Scott actually saved the project. At one point, we were brought in again to do a secondary version of Spider-Man because they so did not believe 3D would work. They asked us to do an alternative version without 3D. So we did one. We call it Stormwatch. And so instead, we tried to do with the elements, put people through rain and snow and wind with all these masters, different villains that had to do with the weather and stuff. Because the one thing, the whole genesis of the Spider-Man ride, which was actually first the Superman ride, because it was going to be DC before it was Marvel. And I got assigned to have the superhero land, among others, in those early concept stages because they knew I was a comic book fan and knew stuff. And I said, okay, well, and Jay said, we got to have a great Superman ride. And I said, okay, well, if it's a superhero ride, you got to have things that get in the face of people. Because when you read a comic book, your comic book reader, that fight is actually happening. You're not seeing the word smack or smash. You're hearing it. Even though you're reading it, you're hearing it and you're feeling that punch. That's, you know, and so whatever this ride is, it has to be right in your face action. But if it's a ride, the rules of rides are you can't put anything physical that's 3 feet out from the furthest, so 6 feet out from the ride, basically 6 feet out from there, 6 feet out from there. So you have this radius, nothing can violate that because someone could get hurt in a worst case scenario. So that brings it right down to what's the only way you can put things in someone's face? 3D. You can put 3D in someone's face on a ride because they can't get hurt by it. It's not really there. It's an illusion, right? So then I thought, well, if we put 3D and 4D together, we can do something pretty spectacular. It would be very comic book in terms of how it would work. And oh my God, again, I won't name anybody, but well, how does 3D work if you're on a moving ride? I said, okay, well, 3D is not a physical thing in your face. It's an illusion that's created and it's in your mind. So don't worry about that. Yes, we will have to work at the angles. The original idea, when we were being budget conscious, because when you're trying to design an attraction, you're always thinking in your head, you can't go in and tell them this is going to cost $200 million because they'll kill it. So originally, I designed an OmniMover system. So the OmniMover would be the camera. I could twist you in to get the 3D where I wanted, bring you through it, and then twist you out. I bring you in, 3D, and then bring you out as the thing happened. So what happened was when we were told to come up with a different approach without the 3D, that's when we added the motion base instead, because now we got to make up for not having 3D with being able to physically move people and try and do things with weather and wind. Wind can come in your face, and light rain can come in your face, water, and smoke. We can put smoke in your face. And so like a tornado, that kind of thing. So we had the moving motion base with that one. We had the OmniMover with the 3D. And then when they decided to go with the 3D thing, we put the two together. We put the motion base with 3D, since now they're okay with the numbers of the motion base, a moving motion base, which was brand new at that time, So, when you're pushing the envelope, you're trying to innovate, but initially you're trying to innovate. When I did T2-3D, I was told we're not going to spend more than $18 million. That's it, Gary. That's all we got. I said, okay. It was but worth every penny. Remember, $32 million, that was the film. We have one in Japan and the one in LA. They amortized the cost of that film over all of them. So that brought down the per cost per unit. So anyway, everything worth doing is always a bit of a challenge, an adventure.